Speaking of things that don't make any sense, unless, of course, you have the lefty hive mind, the woke mind virus, as Elon Musk likes to talk about, the Australian Classification Board. This is the mob that looks at books and movies and video games and cassettes. Well, actually, we don't have cassettes. How did I come up with cassettes? I don't know where that came from.
Look, you're too young to remember cassettes.
No. I had cassettes in the boombox to record songs off of FM radio and whatever when I was a kid. Classic FM, I was recording music off of. It should be.
Of course.
I don't know how I came up with cassettes. I mean, I haven't used a cassette for years, nor a CD, mind you, but I do have lots of old radios. Maybe that's where my mind was going. But anyway, they look at the cassettes, if anyone still makes them, the CDs, the albums that get released, and put a rating on it. You know, you go to the movies, it's G or it's PG or it's M or it's MA15 or it's R or whatever. That mob now wants to take their responsibilities even further. They want to go into the past and reclassify movies and books, etc. because, wait for it, there might be something in a movie or a book that was made, written 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. Wait for it. It reflects the time it was written. Who would have known? I mean, imagine making a movie about the 1800s or the 1700s. It's got slavery in it. Well, we must now go back and reclassify that movie so that you know before you watch it that it has slavery in it. I mean, for goodness sake, what we are talking about here is not the classification board, it's the trigger warning board. They have to now, or they want the power now, to go back and look at everything that has ever been made to say, oh, well, you know, the standards have changed, so we must now apply to those standards to the old product. As if you didn't already know when you were watching Gone with the Wind that it wasn't made yesterday. This is from The Australian. The federal government agency, that is the Classification Board, wants to reclassify publications every 10 years, it's told a review of Australia's classification scheme. They cite the British censor's reclassification of classic children's film Mary Poppins, for heaven's sake, last year. The Australian censor says that it needs new powers to proactively reclassify archaic and out-of-step movies. I'll repeat that, archaic and out-of-step movies, books and TV shows that no longer align with the current guidelines or community standards. As if we don't already know that when we're watching it or reading it. We know that slavery is bad. We know that many things that happened in the past are no longer the standards of today. I mean, do they really think people are that dense that they put on an old movie or pick up a Dickens book and they're like, heavens, that's how life should be lived now. I can't believe it. Like, we know. We don't need to be told.
I mean, the next thing they'll want is the power to hold public book burnings. But we've seen where this goes because they've done this in the UK, whether it's Enid Blyton, Dr Seuss, whether it's Roald Dahl. They've put warnings on those books. Some of them have been withdrawn from shelves. Episodes of Friends have been changed, trigger warnings added because people have been upset by modern sensibilities. Mary Poppins, when it was released in 1964, was rated universal. That rating was repeated in 2013. But last year, it was reclassified as PG because it uses the word Hottentots, which I'd never heard of before, but apparently that refers to an African person. But they used it for chimney sweeps whose faces were covered in soot. And, of course, that's very racist. There's a fatal flaw with what the Australian Classification Board is doing here, and that is the assumption that our morality is improving, that somehow we are more enlightened than our grandparents' generation. I would argue that that is a big call. We are the generation that can't differentiate between a man and a woman, and we suppose that our sense of morality is superior to our grandparents. I think the world was a much more moral place when my grandparents were alive than it is these days. So the arrogance of the censorship board to believe that somehow they are superior to previous generations and should go back and reclassify and mop up the mess of our grandparents, for instance, is just astonishing.